नमः पार्वती पतये हर 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 महादेव। नमोऽस्त्वनन्ताय सहस्रमूर्तये सहस्रपादा शिशिरोर्वावे सहस्रनाम्ने पुरुषाय शाश्वते सहस्रकोटियुगधारिणे नमः। ॐ नमः शिवाय गुरवे सच्चिदानन्दमूर्तये निष्प्रपञ्चाय शान्ताय निरालम्बाय तेजसे नित्यानन्दाय गुरवे संसारहारिणे भक्तकार्येकदेहाय नमस्ते चित्सदात्मने। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ नमो गुरुभ्यो गुरुपादुकाभ्यो नमः परेभ्यः परपादुकाभ्यः आचार्यसिद्धे स्वरपादुकाभ्यो नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्यः। अहिंकाररहस्ययुक्ता श्रींकारगूढा तमःविभूत्या ओंकारमर्म प्रतिपादिनेभ्यः नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। होत्राग्निहोत्राग्निहविष्यहोत्री होमादिसर्वा ऋतिभासमानं यद्ब्रह्म तद्बोधवितारिणेभ्यः नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। कामादिसर्प व्रजगारुणाभ्यां विवेकवैराग्यनिधिप्रदाभ्यां बोधप्रदाभ्यां द्रुतमोक्षदाभ्यां नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। अनन्तसंसारसमुद्रतारा नौकायिताभ्यां स्थिरभक्तिदाभ्यां जाड्यादिशंशोषणवाडवाभ्यां नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ अस्य श्री गुरुगीतास्तोत्रमन्त्रस्य भगवान् सदाशिवर्षि नानाविधानि छन्दांसि श्री गुरु परमात्मा देवता हम बीजं सहशक्ति क्रौङ्कीलकं श्री गुरु प्रसाद सिद्ध्यर्थे जपे विनियोगः। अथ ध्यानम्। हंसाभ्यां परिवृत्तपत्रकमले दिव्ये जगत्कारणे विश्वकीर्णमनेकदे अनिलये स्वच्छन्दमात्मेच्छया तद्योदं वदसाम्भवं तु चरणं दीपाङ्गुरग्राहिणं प्रत्यक्षाक्षरविग्रहं गुरुपदं ध्यायेद्विभुं शाश्वतं। सूत उवाच कैलासशिखरे रम्ये भक्तिसन्धाननायकं प्रणम्य पार्वती भक्त्या शङ्करं परिपृच्छति। श्रीदेव्युवाच ॐ नमो देवदेवेश परात्पर जगद्गुरो सदाशिव महादेव गुरो दीक्षां प्रदेहि मे। केन मार्गेण भो स्वामिन् देहि ब्रह्ममयो भवेत् त्वं कृपां कुरु मे स्वामिन् नमामि चरणौ तव। ईश्वर उवाच मम रूपासि देवी त्वं त्वत्प्रीत्यर्थं वदाम्यहं लोकोपकारकप्रश्नो न केनापि कृतः पुरा। दुर्लभं दृषु लोकेषु तच्छृणुस्व वदाम्यहं गुरुं विना ब्रह्म नान्यत् सत्यं सत्यं वरानने। वेदशास्त्रपुराणानि इतिहासादिकानि च मन्त्रयन्त्रादिविद्याश्च स्मृतिरोच्चाटनादिकं शैव शाक्तागमादीनि अन्यानि विविधानि च जीवानां भ्रान्तचेतसां यज्ञं व्रतं तपोदानं जपं तीर्थं तथैव च गुरो तत्त्वमविज्ञाय मूढस्थो चरते जनः। गुरुर्बुद्ध्यात्मनो नान्यत् सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः तल्लाभार्थं प्रयत्नस्तु कर्तव्यो हि मनीषिभिः। गूढविद्या जगन्माया देहे चाज्ञानसम्भवा उदयो यत्प्रकाशेन गुरुशब्देन कथ्यते। सर्वपापविशुद्धात्मा श्रीगुरोपादसेवनात् देहि ब्रह्म भवेद्यस्मात् त्वत्कृपार्थं वदामि ते। गुरोपादां जुजं श्रित्वा जलं शिरसि धारयेत् सर्वतीर्थभगाहस्य सम्प्राप्नोति फलं नर। शोषणं पापपङ्कस्य दीपनं ज्ञानतेजसा गुरुपादोदकं सम्यक् संसारार्णवतारकम्। अज्ञानमूलहरणं जन्मकर्मनिवारणं ज्ञानवैराग्यसिद्ध्यर्थं गुरोपादोदकं पिबेत्। गुरोपादोदकं यत् युरोरुच्छिष्टभोजनं गुरुमूर्ते सदा ध्यानं गुरुमन्त्रं सदा जपेत्। काशीक्षेत्रं तन्निवासो जाह्नवीचरणोदकं गुरुर्विश्वेश्वरा साक्षात् तारकं ब्रह्मनिश्चितं। गुरोपादोदकं यत्तु गयासौ सोक्षयो भटः तीर्थराजा प्रयागस्य गुरुमूर्तिं स्मरे नित्यं गुरुनाम सदा जपे। गुरोराज्ञां प्रकुर्वीत गुरोरन्यन्यभावयेत्। प्राप्यते तत्प्रसादतः गुरुर्ध्यानं सदा कुर्यात् कुलस्त्री स्वपतिर्यथा स्वाश्रमं च स्वजातिं च स्वकीर्तिपुष्टिवर्धनम् एतत् सर्वं परित्यज्य गुरोरन्यन्यभावयेत् अनन्या चिन्तयन्तो मां सुलभं परमं पदं तस्मात् सर्वप्रयत्नेन गुरोराराधनं कुरु त्रैलोक्ये स्फुटवक्तारो देवाद्यासुरपन्नगा गुरोवक्त्रस्थिता विद्या गुरोभक्त्या तु लभ्यते ओकारस्त्वन्धकारश्च ऋकारस्तेज उच्यते अज्ञानग्रासकं ब्रह्म गुरोरेव न संशया ओकारः प्रथमो वर्णो मायादिगुणभासकः ऋकारो द्वितीयो ब्रह्म मायाभ्रान्तिविनाशनम् एवं गुरोपदसृष्टं देवानामपि दुर्लभम् हा हा हूः गणश्चैव गन्धर्वैश्च प्रपूज्यते ध्रुवं तेषां च सर्वेषां नास्ति तत्त्वं गुरोः परम् आसनं शयनं वस्त्रं भूषणं वाहनादिकम् नादकेन प्रदातव्यं गुरोसन्तोषकारकं गुरोराराधनं कार्यं स्वजीवित्वं निवेदयेत् कर्मणा मनसा वाचा नित्यमाराधयेत् गुरुं दीर्घदण्डं नमस्कृत्य निर्लज्जो गुरुसन्निधौ शरीरम् इन्द्रियं प्राणान् सद्गुरुभ्यो निवेदयेत् आत्मदारादिकं सर्वं सद्गुरुभ्यो निवेदयेत् कृमिकीटभस्मवेष्टा दुर्गन्धिमलमूत्रकं श्लेष्मरक्तं त्वचं मांसं वञ्चयेन्नावरानने संसारवृक्षमारूढा पतन्तो नरकार्णवे येन चैवोद्धृता सर्वे तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नेतवे जगतामेव संसारार्णवसेतवे प्रभवे सर्वविज्ञानं सम्भवे गुरवे नमः अज्ञानमूलः ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः त्वं पिता त्वं च मे माता त्वं बन्धुस्त्वं च देवता संसारप्रतिबोधार्थं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः यत्सत्येन जगत्सत्यं यत्प्रकाशेन भाति तत् यदानन्देन नन्दन्ति तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः यस्य स्थित्या सत्यमिदं यद्भाति भानुरूपतः प्रियं पुत्रादि यत्प्रीत्या तस्मै श्रीगुरवे येन चेतायते हिदं चित्तं चेतायते नयं जाग्रत्स्वप्नसुषुप्त्यादि तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः यस्य ज्ञानादिदं विश्वं न दृश्यं भिन्न वेदतः सदेकरूपरूपाय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः यस्यामतं तस्य मतं मतं यस्य न वेदसः अनन्यभावभावाय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। यस्य कारणरूपस्य कार्यरूपेण भाति यत् कार्यकारणरूपाय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नानारूपमिदं सर्वं न केनाप्यस्ति भिन्नता कार्यकारणता चैव तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। यदग्निकमलद्वन्द्वं द्वन्द्वतापनिवारकं तारकं सर्वदापद्य श्रीगुरुं प्रणमाम्यहम्। शिवे क्रुद्धे गुरुस्त्राता गुरुक्रुद्धे शिवो न तस्मात् सर्वप्रयत्नेन श्रीगुरुं शरणं व्रजे। वन्दे गुरुपदद्वन्द्वं वाङ्मनश्चित्तगोचरम् शिवशक्त्यात्मकं परम् गुकारं च गुणातीतं ऋकारं रूपवर्जितं गुणातीतस्वरूपं च दद्यात् स गुरुस्मृता। आत्रिनेत्रः सर्वसाक्षी अचतुर्बाहुरच्युतः अचतुर्वदनो अयं मयाञ्जलिर्बद्धो दयासागरवृद्धये यदनुग्रहतो जन्तु चित्रसंसारमुक्तिवा। श्रीगुरो परमं रूपं विवेकचक्षुषोऽमृतं मन्दभाग्यान् पश्यन्ति अन्धसूर्योदयं यथा। श्रीनाथचरणद्वन्द्वं यस्यां दिशि विराजते तस्यै दिशे नमस्कुर्य भक्त्या प्रतिदिनं प्रिये। तस्यै दिशे सततमञ्जलिरे सार्ये प्रक्षेप्यते मुखरितौ मधुपैर्बुधैश्च जागर्ति यत्र भगवान् गुरुचक्रवर्ती विश्वोदया प्रलयनाटकनित्यसाक्षी। श्रीनाथादिगुरुत्रयं गणपतिं पीठात्रयं भैरवम् सिद्धौघं वटुकत्रयं वदयुगं दूतीक्रमं मण्डलम्। वीरान्द्वष्टचतुष्टषष्टिनवकं वीराबलिपञ्चकं श्रीमन्मालिनीमन्त्रराजसहितं वन्दे गुरुर्मण्डलम्। अव्यस्तये सकलये सुदीर्घमनिलये व्याधे प्रदैर्दुष्करे प्राणायामसतैरनेककरणे दुःखात्मकैर्दुर्जये। यस्मिन्नाभ्युदिते विनाशति बले वायु स्वयं तत्क्षणात् प्राप्तुं तत्सहजं स्वभावमनिशं सेवध्वमेकं गुरुम्। स्वदेशिकसेव शरीरचिन्तनं भवेदनन्तस्य शिवस्य चिन्तनं स्वदेशिकस्यैव च नामकीर्तनं भवेदनन्तस्य शिवस्य कीर्तनम्। यत्पादरेणुकणिका कापि संसारवारिधे सेतुवन्दायते नाथं देशिकं तमुपास्महे। यस्मादनुग्रहं लब्ध्वा महदज्ञानमुत्सृजे तस्मै श्रीदेव नमश्चाभीष्टसिद्धये पादाब्जं सर्वसंसार दावानलविनाशकं ब्रह्मरन्ध्रे चिताम्भोज मध्यस्थं चन्द्रमण्डले अकथादित्रिरेखाब्जे सहस्रदलमण्डले अन्तपार्श्वत्रिकोणे च स्मरे तन्मध्यगं गुरुम् सकलभुवनसृष्टे कल्पिता शेषपुष्टिर्निखिलनिगमदृष्टे सम्पदां व्यर्थदृष्टि अवगुणपरिमाष्टे तत्पदार्थैकदृष्टिर्वगुणपरमेष्टे मोक्षमार्गे सकलभुवनरङ्गा स्थापनस्तंभयसि सकरुणरसवृष्टे तत्त्वमालासमसि सकलमयसृष्टे सच्चिदानन्ददृष्टि निवसतु मयि नित्यं श्रीगुरुदिव्यदृष्टि अग्निशुद्धं समन्तातु ज्वालापरीचकादिया मन्त्रराजमिमं मन्ये हर्निशं पातु मृत्युतः तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तत्समीपगे तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्य वाह्यतः अनादिनिधनस्वयम् अविकारश्चिदानन्द अणीयान्मातो मा अपूर्वाणाम्बरं नित्यं स्वयं ज्योतिर्निरामयं विरजं वरमाकाशं ध्रुवमानन्दमव्ययम् स्तुति प्रत्यक्षमैतेयम् अनुमानचतुष्टयं यस्य यद्भवं कार्यं तद्वदामि महामते साधुत्वं च मया दृष्टं त्वयि तिष्ठति साम्प्रतम् अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः सर्वश्रुते शिरोरत्ना विराजिता पदाम्बुजः वेदान्ताम्बुजसूर्याय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे यस्य स्मरणमात्रेण ज्ञानमुत्पद्यते स्वयं य एव सर्वसम्प्राप्ते तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः चैतन्यं शाश्वतं शान्तं व्योमातीतं निरञ्जनं नादबिन्दुकलातीतं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः ज्ञानशक्ति समारूढस्तत्त्वमाला विभूषिता भुक्तिमुक्तिप्रदाताय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः अनेकजन्मसम्प्राप्त सर्वकर्मविदाहिने स्वात्मज्ञानप्रभावेण तस्मै श्रीगुरवे गुरोरधिकं तत्त्वं न गुरोरधिकं तपः तत्त्वं ज्ञानात् परं नास्ति तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथ मद्गुरु श्री जगद्गुरु ममात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री मोक्षमूलं गुरुकृपा गुरुरादिरनादिश्च गुरुपरमदैवतं गुरुपरतरं नास्ति तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। सप्तसागरपर्यन्तं तीर्थस्नानादिकं फलं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपयो बिन्दु सहस्रांशेन दुर्लभम्। हरोरुष्टे गुरुस्राता गुरुरुष्टेन कश्चन तस्मात् सर्वप्रयत्नेन श्रीगुरुं शरणं व्रजे। गुरुरेव जगत्सर्वं ब्रह्म विष्णु शिवात्मकं गुरुपरतरं नास्ति तस्मात् सम्पूजयेत् गुरुम्। ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं लभ्यते गुरुभक्तितः गुरुपरतरं नास्ति देयोऽसौ गुरुमार्गिभिः। यस्मात् परतरं नास्ति नेति नेतीति वै श्रुतिः मनसा वचसा चैव नित्यमाराधयेत् गुरुम्। गुरुकृपाप्रसादेन ब्रह्म विष्णु सदाशिवा समर्थ प्रभवादौ च केवलं गुरुसेवया। देवकिन्नरगन्धर्वा पितरो यक्षचारणा मुनयोऽपि न जानन्ति गुरुशुश्रूषा। महाहंकारगर्वेण तपो विद्यावलान्विता संसारकुहरावर्ते घटयन्त्रे यथा घटा। न मुक्ता देवगन्धर्वा पितरो यक्षकिन्नरा अतिशया सर्वसिद्धाश्च गुरुसेवा पराङ्मुखा। ज्ञानं शृणु महादेवी सर्वानन्दप्रदायकं सर्वसौख्यकरं नित्यं मुक्तिमुक्तिविदायकम्। श्रीमत्परब्रह्म गुरुं स्मरामि श्रीमत्परब्रह्म गुरुं वदामि श्रीमत्परब्रह्म गुरुं नमामि श्रीमत्परब्रह्म गुरुं भजामि। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वदि साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं निराकारं निरञ्जनं नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं गुरुं ब्रह्मा नमाम्यहम्। हृदम्बुजे कर्णिकमध्यसंस्थे सिंहासने संस्थितदिव्यमूर्तिं ध्यायेत् गुरुं चन्द्रकला प्रकाशं चित्पुस्तकाविष्टवरं ददानं ताम्बरं श्वेतविलेपपुष्पं मुक्ताविभूषं मुदितं द्विनेत्रं स्थितदिव्यशक्तिं मन्दास्थितं कृपानिदानम् आनन्दमानन्दगरं प्रसन्नं ज्ञानस्वरूपं निजबोधयुतं योगीन्द्रमीड्यम् अवरोगवैद्यं श्रीमद्गुरुं यस्मिन् सृष्टिस्थितिध्वंस निग्रहानुग्रहात्मकं कृत्यं पञ्चविधं शाश्वत भासते तं नमाम्यहम् प्रातः शिरसि शुक्लाब्जे द्विनेत्रं द्विभुजं गुरुं वराभयायुतं शान्तं स्मरेतं नामपूर्वकम् न गुरोरधिकं न गुरोरधिकं न गुरोरधिकं न गुरोरधिकं शिवशासनता 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 त्विदमेव शिवं त्विदमेव शिवं त्विदमेव शिवं त्विदमेव मम शासनतो मम शासनतो मम शासनतो एवं विधं गुरुं ध्यात्वा ज्ञानमुत्पद्यते स्वयं तत्सद्गुरुप्रसादेन मुक्तोऽहमेति भावये गुरुदर्शितमार्गेण मनःशुद्धिं तु कारयेत् अनित्यं खण्डयेत् सर्वं यत्किञ्चिदात्मगोचरम् ज्ञेयं सर्वस्वरूपं च ज्ञानं च मन उच्यते ज्ञानं ज्ञेयं समं कुर्यात् नान्यपन्था द्वितीयका एवं श्रुत्वा महादेवी गुरुनिन्दां करोति यः स याति नरकं घोरं यावच्चन्द्रदिवाकरो यावत् कल्पान्तको देहः गुरुलोपो न कर्तव्यः स्वच्छन्दो यदि वा भवेत् ओङ्कारेण न वक्तव्यं प्राज्ञे शिष्ये कथञ्चन गुरोरग्ने न वक्तव्यम् असत्यं च कदाचन गुरुं त्वं कृत्य हुङ्कृत्य स भवेद् ब्रह्म राक्षस मुनिभिः पन्नगैर्वापि सुरैर्वा शापितो यदि आलमृत्यो भयाद्वापि गुरो रक्षति पार्वती आसक्तासि सुराध्यस्य असक्ता मुनयस्तथा गुरो शापेन ते शीघ्रं क्षयं यान्ति न संशय मन्द्रराजमिदं देवी गुरुरित्यक्षरद्वयम् देवै सन्न्यासिना प्रोक्ता इतरे वेषधारिणा नित्यं ब्रह्मा निराकारं निर्गुणं बोधयेत् गुरु सर्वं ब्रह्मा दीपो दीपान्तरं यथा गुरुकृपाप्रसादेन आत्मरामं निरीक्षयेत् अनेन गुरु आब्रह्मस्तम्भपर्यन्तं परमात्मस्वरूपकं स्थावरं जङ्गमं चैव प्रणमामि जगन्मयं वन्देऽहं सच्चिदानन्दं वेदातीतं सदागुरु नित्यं पूर्णं निराकारं निर्गुणं स्वात्मसंस्थितं परात्परतरं देयं नित्यमानन्दकारकम् अप्रतिमारूपं दृश्यते दर्पणे यथा तथात्मनि चिदाकारम् आनन्दं सोऽहमित्युता अङ्गुष्ठमात्रपुरुषं ध्यायतश्चिन्मयं हृदि तत्र स्फुरति भावोऽय शृणुतं कथयाम्यहम् अगोचरं तथा गम्यं नामरूपाविवर्जितं निःशब्दं तद्विजानीय स्वभावं ब्रह्म पार्वती यथा गन्धस्वभावेन कर्पूरकुसुमादिषु शीतोष्णादिस्वभावेन तथा ब्रह्म च शाश्वतम् स्वयं तथा विदो भूत्वा साधव्यं यत्र कुत्रचित् कीटभ्रमरवत् तत्र ध्यानं भवति गुरोर्ध्यानं तथा कृत्वा ब्रह्ममयो भवेत् पिण्डे पदे तथा रूपे मुक्तौ सोनात्र संशयः श्रीपार्वती उवाच पिण्डं किं नो महादेव पदं किं समुदारितं नुपातीतं च रूपं किम् एतदाख्यायि शङ्करम् श्रीमहादेव उवाच युम्नं कुण्डलिनी शक्ति पदं हंसमुदारितं रूपं बिन्दुरिति गेयं रूपातीतं निरञ्जनं पिण्डे मुक्ता पदे मुक्ता रूपे मुक्ता वरानने रूपातीते तु ये मुक्ता स्वयं सर्वमयो भूत्वा परात्परतरं नान्यत् सर्वमेतन्निरालयम् अत्यावलोकनं प्राप्य सर्वसङ्गविवर्जितम् एकाकी निःस्पृहा शान्त इष्टादे तत्प्रसादतः स्वल्पं वा बहुलं तथा निष्कामनैव भोक्तव्यं सर्वसन्तोषचेतसां सर्वज्ञपदमित्याहुर्देहि सर्वमयो बुधा सदानन्दः सदा शान्तो रमते च कुत्रचित् यत्रैव तिष्ठते सोऽपि नद्येषा पुण्यभाजनं मुक्तस्य लक्षणं देवि तवाग्रे कथितं मया उपदेशस्तथा देवि गुरुमार्गेण मुक्तिदः गुरुभक्ति सदा ध्यानं सकलं तव कीर्तितम् अनेन यद्भवेत्कार्यं वदामि महामते लोकोपकारकं देवी लौकिकं तु न भावये लौकिकात् कर्मणो यान्ति ज्ञानहीनाववर्णम् ज्ञानी तु भावयेत् सर्व कर्मनिष्कर्म यत्कृतम् वदन्तात्मकं देवी शुद्धतत्त्वं मयोदितं भवव्याधिविनाशार्थं स्वयमेव जपेत् सदा गुरुगीताक्षरैकं तु मन्त्रराजमिमं जपेत् अन्ये च विविधा मन्त्रा फलं नारन्ति षोडशि अनन्तफलमाप्नोति गुरुगीता सर्वपापप्रशमनं सर्वदारिद्र्यनाशनं फलमृत्युभयहरं सर्वसङ्कटनाशनं यक्षराक्षसभूतानां चोरव्याघ्रभयापहं महाव्याधि अथवा मोहनं वश्यं स्वयमेव जपेत् सदा वज्रासने च दारिद्र्यं पाषाणे रोगसम्भवा मेदिन्यां दुःखमाप्नोति नष्टाजिने ज्ञानसिद्धि शासने ज्ञानसिद्धि सर्वसिद्धिसुखं वये पुरुषैर्वा दुर्भया देवी आसने शुभ्रकम्बले उपविश्य ततो देवी जपेदेकाग्रमानसा उत्तरे शान्तिकामस्तु वशे पूर्वमुखो जपेत् दक्षिणे मारणं प्रोक्तं पश्चिमे च धनागमः मोहनं सर्वभूतात्मभोक्ताकरं भवेत् देवराजप्रियकरं सर्वलोकवशं भवेत् कर्म सिद्धिदं भवेत् सर्वेषां कार्यं भवग्रहभयापहं दुःस्वप्ननाशनं चैव सुस्वप्नफलदायकं सर्वशान्तिकरं नित्यं तथा वन्द्यासुपुत्रदम् सौभाग्यदायकं सदा आयुरारोग्यमैश्वर्यं पुत्रपौत्रप्रवर्धनम् अकामता श्रीविधवा जपान्मोक्षमवाप्नुयात् अवैधव्यं सकामतो लभते चान्यजन्मनि सर्वदुःखकरं नित्यं नाशयेच्छापहारकम् सर्वबाधाप्रशमनं धर्मार्थकाममोक्षदं यं यं चिन्तयते काम तं तं प्राप्नोति सदा तस्य कामधेनु कल्पनाकल्पपादपः चिन्तामणिश्चिन्ति तस्य आणपत्यस्य वैष्णवः शैवस्य सिद्धिदं देवी सत्यं सत्यं न संशयः अथ काम्या जपे स्थानं कथयामि वरानने सागरे वा सरितीरे अवा हरिहरालये भक्तिदेवालये गोष्ठे सर्वदेवालयेषु वे भटे च दातृमूले वा देवभावने तथा पवित्रे निर्मले स्थाने नित्यानुष्ठानतोऽपि वा निर्वेदनेन मौनेन जपमेतं समाधये संदाने भूमौ तु वटमूलान्तिके तथा सिद्ध्यन्ति दातरे मूले च्यूतवृक्षस्य सन्निधौ गुरुपुत्रो वरं मूर्खस्तस्य सिद्ध्यन्ति नान्यथा शुभकर्माणि सर्वाणि जाव्रता तपांसि च महेशास देवर्षि पितृकिन्नरा सिद्धचारण यक्षास अन्येऽपि मुनयो जना अन्यतीर्थं निरर्थकम् सर्वतीर्थाश्रयो देवी पादाङ्गुष्ठं स वर्तते जपेन जयमाप्नोति चानन्तफलमाप्नुयात् हीनकर्मा त्यजन् सर्वं स्थानानि च दमानि च जपं हीनासनं कुर्वन् हीनकर्मा फलप्रदम् गुरुगीतां प्रयाणे वा सङ्ग्रामे रिपुसङ्कटे जपं जयमवाप्नोति मरणे मुक्तिदायकम् सर्वकर्म च सर्वत्र गुरुपुत्रस्य सिद्ध्यति इदं रहस्यं नो वाच्यं तवाग्रे कथितं मया सुगोप्यं च मम त्वं च प्रियात्विति स्वामी मुख्य गणेशादि विष्णुवादीनां च पार्वती मनसापि न वक्तव्यं सत्यं सत्यं वदाम्यहम् अतीव पक्वचित्ताय श्रद्धा भक्तियुताय च प्रवक्तव्यमिदं देवी ममात्मासि सदा प्रिये अभक्ते वञ्चके धूर्ते पाखण्डे नास्तिके नरे मनसापि न वक्तव्या गुरुगीता कदाचन संसारसागरसमुद्धरणकमन्त्रं ब्रह्मादिदेवमुनिपूजितसिद्धमन्त्रम् दारिद्र्यदुःखभवरोगविनाशमन्त्रम् वन्दे महाभयहरं गुरुराजमन्त्रम् इति श्रीस्कन्दपुराणे उत्तरखण्डे ईश्वरपार्वती संवादे गुरुगीता समाप्ता श्रीगुरुदेव चरणार्पणमस्तु नित्यानन्दाय गुरवे शिष्यसंसारहारिणे भक्तकार्ये कदेहाय नमस्ते चित्सदात्मने निर्वासनं निराकाङ्क्षं सर्वदोषविवर्जितं निरालम्बं निरातङ्कं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम् निर्ममं निरहङ्कारं समदोषात्मकाञ्चनं सुखं धीरं भवभूतं नमाम्यहम् अविनाशिनमात्मानम् एकं विज्ञाय तत्त्वतः वीतरागभयक्रोधं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम् जीवो नाहम् अहं निचित् एवं विज्ञाय सन्तुष्टम् अवधूतं नमाम्यहम् समस्तं कल्पनामात्रम् आत्मा मुक्ता सनातना इति विज्ञाय सन्तृप्तं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम् ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं कामसङ्कल्पवर्जितं हेयोपादेयहीनं तम् अवधूतं नमाम्यहम् स्वभावेनैव यो योगी सुखं भोगं न वाञ्छति यदृच्छालाभसन्तुष्टं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम् नैव निन्दाप्रशंसाभ्यां यस्य विक्रियते मनः आत्मक्रीणं महात्मानम् अवधूतं नमाम्यहम् नित्यं जाग्रदवस्थायां स्वप्नवद्योऽवतिष्ठते निश्चिन्तं चिन्मयात्मानं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम्। द्वेष्यं नास्ति प्रियं नास्ति नास्ति यस्याशुभाशुभम्। भेदज्ञानविहीनं तम् अवधूतं नमाम्यहम्। जडं पश्यति न यस्तु जगत् पश्यति चिन्मयम्। नित्ययुक्तं गुणातीतं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम्। यो हि दर्शनमात्रेण भवते भुवनत्रयम्। आनन्दं तीर्थम् अवधूतं नमाम्यहम्। सर्वपूज्यं सदा पूर्णम् अखण्डानन्दविग्रहम्। स्वप्रकाशं चिदानन्दं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम्। निष्कलं निष्क्रियं शान्तं निर्मलं परमामृतम्। योगपूर्णं तपोमूर्तिं प्रेमपूर्णं सुदर्शनम्। ज्ञानपूर्णं कृपामूर्तिं नित्यानन्दं नमाम्यहम्। दुर्जनः सज्जनो भूयात् सज्जनः शान्तिमाप्नुयात्। शान्तो मुच्येत बन्धेभ्यो मुक्तशान्यान् विमोचयेत्। स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्याय्येन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः। गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी सस्यशालिनी। देशोऽयं क्षोभरहितो ब्राह्मणाः सन्तु निर्भयाः। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः। सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। सर्वस्तरतु दुर्गाणि सर्वो भद्राणि पश्यतु। सर्वकामान् वाप्नोतु सर्वत्र नन्दतु। स्वस्ति मातरौ पित्रे नो अस्तु। स्वस्ति गोभ्यो जगते पुरुषेभ्यः। विश्वं सुभूतं सुविधात्रं नो अस्तु। योगे वदृशे सूर्यम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। आरती करूं सद्गुरु के करूं सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरु हर के। आरती करूं गुरु हर के। आरती करूं सद्गुरु के करूं सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरु हर के। आरती करूं गुरु हर के। जय गुरुदेव अमल अविनाशी ज्ञान रूप धर के वासी। जय गुरुदेव अमल अविनाशी ज्ञान रूप धर के वासी। पग पग पर देते प्रकाश जैसे किरणे दिनकर की। आरती करूं गुरु प्रेमी हे पल पाए। शरण तुम्हारे क्या है छाया, कल्प वृक्ष तर पर की आरती करूं गुरु पर की। आरती करूं सद्गुरु की करूं, सद्गुरु की प्यारे गुरु पर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। अंधकार से हमें निकाला, ब्रह्म ज्ञान के पूर्ण प्रकाशक, योग ज्ञान के अटल प्रवर्तक। जय गुरु चरण सरोज मिटाई, यथा हमारे गुर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। आरती करूं सद्गुरु की करूं, सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरु पर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। अंधकार से हमें निकाला, दिगलाया है अमर उजाला। अंधकार से हमें निकाला, दिगलाया है अमर उजाला। तब से जाने जान रहे थे, काक सुनो दर दर की। आरती करूं आरती करूं सद्गुरु की करूं, सद्गुरु की प्यारे गुरु पर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। संशय मिटा विवेक कराया, भवसागर से पार लंघाया। संशय मिटा विवेक कराया, भवसागर से पार लंघाया। अमर प्रदीप जला कर गर्दि, निशा दूर इस तन की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। आरती करूं सद्गुरु की करूं, सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरु पर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। वेदों बीच अभेद बताया, आवागमन में मुक्त कराया। वेदों बीच अभेद बताया, आवागमन में मुक्त कराया। धन्य हुए हम पाकर ब्रह्म ज्ञान निरंतर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। आरती करूं सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरु पर की। आरती करूं गुरु पर की। करो कृपा सद्गुरु जगतारण, सतपथ दर्शक भ्रांति निवारण। करो कृपा सद्गुरु पाले लीला धर की आरती करूं गुरुवर आरती करूं सदगुरु की करूं सदगुरु की प्यारे गुरुवर की आरती करूं गुरुवर की नित्यानंद सद्गुरुदाता शक्तिपात के दिव्य प्रदाता मोक्षानंद सद्गुरुदाता कर के वास गणेश पुरी बाबा आधार ले जनकी आरती करूं गुरुवर आरती करूं सद्गुरु के करूं सद्गुरु के प्यारे गुरुवर के आरती करूं गुरुवर की। ओम
It's a pleasure to be here with whoever's here and sharing this time in this space and this whole level of our journey. So let us begin. Nityanandaya Gurave Shrisha Samsara Harine Bhakta Karye Kadeyaya Namaste Chitsaratmane Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchit Ananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavahe Om Shanti 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 Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai. Welcome also to all of those out there wherever you are. And the land of the digital universe, maybe we could call it, live streaming today. And it's wonderful because sometimes when I'm out there as well, is an opportunity to, you just record. And then when you have a time and a space in the day, or maybe another day, you can just pull it up and you can just share and be a part of the Sangha. And that's what it's about too. Satsang and Sangha are so related to the journey. We journey together. We journey together. And if we didn't, a lot of times the journey would stop. So what I'm just touching on is the importance of, if you will, not only sharing a similar understanding and intention and journey, but sometimes being almost like a cheerleader for each other. You can, come on, you can do it. You know, I know it's hard, or you just got this going on or that, but let's keep at it. Let's keep moving. In that light, I had some things I was thinking about, and one of the things that occurred to me is that we're 8 months into this particular phase of the journey. And that's a pretty good part of time. One of the things that I have talked about a lot, or just as a way of thinking about it, and it's a quote from the world out there, the scientific world, but I think it really says the same thing to all of us. And it's Einstein when he says, "Nothing happens unless something moves." How simple is that? But how profound. Nothing happens unless something moves. And so I'm saying that to just spark this recollection, this reflection here at this 8-month point, for each of us to sort of ask ourselves, and what has been moving? Has something been moving? And what is the nature of that movement for each of us in regards to this particular aspect of our journey? Shiva Shakti, Saundarya Lahari, all that fits into that space. For each of us, a moment to say, and what has happened and what's moving for me? And it's not about how fast necessarily, but just what's moving. And then we can genuinely say, the journey continues. But it only does if something is moving. I love what both Nityeshwari and Dana have been doing in this space, and I really, how would I say it, appreciate the lovely way they've sparked this journey, kept us moving. Some very basic but powerful things that Dana said last week and that Nityashwari had talked about before, the whole issue of doubt and what that can do and how do we work with that. And Dana was talking about a kind of movement, but he says we all want our lives to go well. I mean, regardless if we're on a spiritual path, we are not in the Himalayas in a cave. We're living our lives. And so we want that life, as we pursue our spiritual journey, to go well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, that is the key to, I would say, this particular journey that Adi Shankaracharya has taken us on. He's known so much for the work that he's done in structuring, revitalizing the whole spiritual journey as it relates to Vedanta. And we know him for that, sorting out, bringing clarity, as any divine manifestation like a Krishna, Rama would do. They come, they do the work, and they are models as well. And I think that's an important thing. They don't arrive and say, I am the one. Just listen to me. They come and engage with us. They are part of life. They are mortal in the same way that we are. They have a body. They often do it in a very short time. And with everything that he did around the structure, around getting clear what is Vedanta about, just wading through all of the confusion and fogginess that had come into it. And he said, this is it. This is what we're about. Brahma Satyam. That is the truth. The world is an illusion, and we have to talk about what that means. And the individual is that Brahman. And you hear that, you think about it, and how simple. And then, right at the end, he comes and he does this thing with the Saundarya Lahari, which is, this is divine inspired poetry. Well, now, how did that happen? How did he change his hat, as we would say today? And why? And what is the purpose? Because no matter how clear the scriptures are, no matter how clear they are, the thing that we are challenged with is it's so ephemeral, isn't it? So, yes, Chaitanya Mahatma, the self is consciousness. I accept that. But what does that mean? Someone texted me this past week, in fact, and they had a question, comment really. They said, I've been listening to this, and I've been listening to Shaivism, and I'm reading it, and I understand it, but it's not sinking in. And I thought about that, and I went, that's interesting. She says she understands it, but it's not necessarily making the difference she wants it to make. Think about that. And I think this is where Saundarya Lahari, the goddess, the Devi, comes in, because it gets broken down in a different way. I'm just thinking how I want to approach this. So when we start to actually follow these shlokas and understand Sri Vidya and then get inside of it, it gets quite precise. So what I'll do, because have a few things that you can hang on to here. So as Nityashwari talked about doubt, as Gurudev has talked so much about faith, we almost have polarities, don't we? On the one end, we have doubt, and on the other hand, we have faith. But neither one of those is really easy to understand. And I want to make a point and say it's like the world of science. They also go between doubt and faith, back and forth. What do we believe? Why do we believe it? How do we know that it's actually true? So let's look at one of the shlokas, shall we? That's one way of looking at it. And I think I looked at number 27. Basically, the translation is this: may my, interesting words, may my prattle be the utterance of thy mantra. This is talking to the Devi, of course. My hand movements, the gestures, movements of thy worship. My walking, thy circumnambulation. My eating and drinking, oblations to thee. The stretching of my limbs, prostration to thee. All my enjoyments, the various offerings made during thy worship. Thus may all my actions become acts of self-dedication. And if we just go back a step and break it down a little bit, japa, and this is just breaking down some of the Sanskrit, japa, utterance of thy mantra, japaha, my prattle, shilpam sakalam api, movements of my hands, mudram viracharam, hand gestures of thy worship, gatihi, my walking, pradakshiyanam, pramanam, circumnambulation. You get the point here. So what he's saying is that everything that we do is an offering, is a manifestation, is a prostration to the Devi. All of my actions, all of my thoughts, all of my movements. So the idea here and the practice becomes holding that awareness as I walk, as I sleep, as I look up, as I eat. And going on further in the commentary, she's trying to say to us that at the moment, ultimately all that remains is Shakti. But we have to hold that awareness. We have to practice holding that awareness. And I think that's the space where we can create movement for ourselves in our sadhana. To actually bring Chaitanya Mahatma, all of the Sanskrit, all of the sutras, all of the basic philosophy that we have, how do we bring it to life? We bring it to life when we see in everything that we're doing, it is life itself. Keeping this in mind, one should consider each and everything in life as a gift from her and feel forever indebted. So we're going into this space of feeling every breath, everything. In Tantra, the way in which one sits, bathes, combs the hair, decides what to dress or wear, again, sleeping or worship, everything is meaningful. Everything is an act of worship. And that touches on a very important point. It's really all about feeling. And the feeling that we have is what we mean by devotion. The feeling that we have is what we mean by devotion. It's not that we have to do something different, change myself into a bhakta, a devoted person. Our lives are already a manifestation of feeling. The question is simply, where and how do we direct that feeling? That's the subtle but profound shift that we're talking about. We know we have feelings. We get upset, we get angry, we have negative feelings, okay? And this is saying, no, but if we understand all of this is a manifestation, a divine manifestation, every little thing, then the feeling that we have gets converted. And it's very hard then to just be angry at even another person or situation when we are really overlaying that with this is all Shakti, this is the Devi. Then we may have it, but we back off pretty quick. Someone was talking to me recently about, it's a little bit of an English thing, England meaning London, the kingdom. And they talked about how in their sadhana, they were working with, and it was changing things when they thought about, how do I manage the gap? This is what I mean. The gap between when something goes off, I lose my awareness of truth, the mantra, whatever my practice is, and I get caught in, let's just call it that, Maya. And what does that do? Changes everything. Now we have enemies, the internal enemies that we're working with. And this person said, I realize that I've got to manage the gap. And I said, what do you mean? And this, I don't know if you are aware of that phrase, that English phrase, mind the gap. Okay? And this person said, well, I'm on track, I'm focused on Shakti, and then something happens that takes me into another space. And I've been noticing that space, that gap, can get pretty long before I realize, oh man, what am I doing? I'm losing my focus on God, the self, Shakti, the Devi, and all of that. And the person said, I realize it's about minding the gap. It's about catching it, just like you might fall off the train tracks or the platform if you don't mind the gap. And for this person, they said it was a revelation. Because now, not only am I doing my practice, but I'm mindful of the gap. And as soon as I notice I'm into a negative, distracted space, I come back. And whatever it is for them, remembering the Devi, remembering the mantra, mind the gap. So to me, this is a little example of what Einstein is saying. How do we move? We move, in this case, by minding the gap. And we come back. We come back to where we want to be. So the person said, I know all of this is about my sadhana, but sometimes I forget. I know all of this is about my sadhana, but sometimes I forget, especially when I'm not sitting in the beautiful space of an ashram and I'm out, quote, in the world. And so that separation, or that apparent separation, that Maya that catches us, is what I'm struggling with. Because out there, I get into it. I get into this person, this situation, this politician, this whatever it is, and it takes me to a space where I know I don't want to be. I've committed to not being there, and yet I look up and that's where I'm at. And so that's really the challenge, because most of my life is spent out there. So if that's the case, it means unless I have a way of dealing with that, I'm going to take a step forward in my sadhana, and as soon as I step back into the world, I'm taking 5 or 10 steps backwards if I don't mind the gap. We've talked about the point of realizing from the ultimate perspective, there is no gap. And I mean by that, to be clear, the spiritual and the worldly. There is no gap. This is the great beauty of tantric path. It says that. It says there is no gap. Another person came to me. I don't know why people come to me with these things. Anyway, this person said, I've got this thing that I'm doing at work. It's a job, and I'm going between leaving my job and going to a new job, and I'm having to manage this situation, and I'm worried about leaving my job and what they're going to think, but I've got this great offer for something that I really want. So I'm doing this, right? And the reason this person is leaving this job because they really haven't treated her that well. Okay? So fair enough, right? But at the same time, she doesn't want to get them offside. Again, fair enough. Over here, she's looking at a new thing. The anxiety in that is that I'm not sure it's going to be all they say it's going to be. Isn't life wonderful? And so she's got this. And we were talking about really spiritual things, and she just said, I do have this situation at work. Could we just say a little bit about that? And when she said that, and it's an ongoing thing, I thought for a moment, and I actually did think of the Devi. And I thought of this, and I thought of what we've been looking at and reflecting on. And I had this inner thought, because she hadn't been following this, by the way. I mean, she's on the path, but she hadn't been following this. See how it happens? And I said to her, we've been studying Shiva Shakti and all of this. She says, yeah, I've been busy. I haven't really, it hasn't worked like that for me. And I said, okay, fair enough. Life is like that. And I said, well, let me just give you a very quick update. And I said a few things about it, things that she understood at a high level. And I said, but when you think about the Devi, and when you look at the Saundarya Vihara, do you know what that's about? She goes, don't have a clue. And I said, okay, how can I make this very simple? And I said, these 100 slokas are about life, are about how we look at, worship, bring the Devi into life, as Dana was saying last week, to make our life better. She immediately, and I said, and it's quite specific. And I talked about how each verse is really about improving some aspect of life. But you have to practice. So this is with the thing where, she had to get into it. I said, you have to do it. It's not like just reading a couple of shlokas and then just forgetting that and going off. And I gave her the whole idea, and if you repeat it a certain number of times, and, she was like, 1,000. But we settled down and we talked about it. And we said, you can start slow. You can just do it a little. But she was definitely very inspired. And she said, I think that's exactly what I need. Because I want something from all of this that I can see is impacting my life and making my life better and managing the difficulties I experience in my life. And we ended it at that. The very next day, I get, you ever get a loud text? I mean, it's just words, but it's bold, it's exclamation points and all of that. And she said, they've approved everything at my old job. And she'd been working on this for a while. Just done, all right? And she said, and I'm feeling so much better and so much connected. And I just thought, wow, the Devi is absolutely stunning. Just a few words, what she had done. She had chosen one of the slokas, and she'd repeated it 13 times. That's what she did. And she, in her mind, got a result. That's Tantra. That's the power of the Devi. You know how we keep using that, I was going to say a metaphor, but that reality that even the dust, a little of the dust of the divine's feet is enough to do anything. And basically I thought to myself, that's what happened to her. Just a little dust, just a little bit. She said, I did it, because we were talking about 1,000 times and all of that, which relatively speaking isn't so much, but for a person really busy in life. And I told her that. I said, just don't make it too big. And she said, I just did it 13 times. And for her, it was a revelation. And then, a day later, I get another loud text, but it was a lovely loud text. She had gone through all of the shlokas and come up with, looking at the Descent and all of those books, her titles for each shloka and what it was about and what it would give you and what you had to do. And I thought, wow, if you do something, it makes a difference. And so, getting back to my initial thing, I'm saying each of us needs to just always reflect. And it's a reflection on both what it is we're studying, but how am I moving within the context of that study? What am I doing? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but nothing happens unless something moves. She moved. Something happened. Okay? But no one can tell each of us exactly the way in which we need to move. Really, it gets back to we have to determine that. We have to look at the whole picture of our being and our life and say, I've got to start somewhere, I've got to move somewhere, I've got to continue moving in some way. What is the way that I choose to move now? And when we look at this work and this offering, it's so specific that you can choose something and you can do it. And then, and I've always believed this as well, when you do one thing, it leads to the next. And that first thing may seem like the hill or the mountain that you have to cross, but a step forward and it starts to move. So back to the other person who said, I read the Shaivism, I understand it, and get this distinction, but I don't really get it. Does that make sense? I understand it, but I don't really get it. I don't know your interpretation. My interpretation is I understand the words logically, but I don't really get it enough to move, enough for it to make a difference in my life. And I give that person full credit for just saying that, to acknowledging that. And again, as Gurudev is always encouraging, we just had a conversation. And, we talked about it and said, well, what are you going to do with that? Can you do something with that? Can it affect your life? Can it cause you to move and do something in a way that you begin to feel the presence of that? So, another sort of a quote, in reality, the act of worship is related to one's feelings. When one begins to feel her presence everywhere, inside and out, then one becomes connected to that power. The act of worship is related to feelings. When one begins to feel her presence, and we talked about in Shloka 27 how you can do that, then one begins to feel her presence everywhere, inside and out. And that's Tantra, inside and out. Then one becomes connected to that power. And once we feel connected to that power, it goes without saying, we feel more powerful. And then we can do the next thing. And then that practice starts to take hold. And we don't really look back. There's slower points and all of that, but we don't look back. So a profound shift of focus and understanding, in a sense, allowing the heart, the Shakti, to lead the way. Related things about it, because this is just our midterm. In college and university, you have midterms, and you do these things, you reflect, and you see where you are. So this is our midterms, so to speak. So another situation came up. We spend time, I have a home, a parents' home, family home down in New Jersey, right near, well, very close to the ocean. And there's a spiritual town there. Some of you no, you wouldn't know of it. It's called Ocean Grove. I'll let it out. And it's a Methodist community. And there's one in Australia, believe it or not. It's also a Methodist community. They are connected. They talk about it, they call it, the nickname is 1 square mile, God's 1 square mile, because the whole town is spiritual in some way. And we've found that it's like a tiny bit of an ashram, because people are connected, they all come for God in some way, shape, or form. And their families are there, and they do things there. And we walk along, you can walk along the boardwalk or through town, and you'll hear a sermon going on. You know, so some of them are outdoors, some of them are indoors, some of them are kind of in between indoors and outdoors. And the point is, you can find it wherever you go if you look, if you're open to it. And it doesn't have to be your path per se. But we found that I don't know, it's just that Davy, let's call it that. Doesn't matter whether they're talking about things that are different in terms of a specific path. As Vedas say, Ekam Sat. The truth is one. And you start to feel they're talking about some aspect of the Devi. One of the things that came up, and why I'm mentioning was that there is this thing that happens in that tradition, asking God for something, asking God for peace, asking God for healing, asking God for wealth, asking God all of these things. Another way that was talked about looking at that when a person was complaining was to say, okay, when you ask God for that consciousness, the Devi, there's an attitude that asking can have. Almost like you do the work. I want peace, you give it to me. You can understand that in a way, but then that person can have a complaining attitude. It's not happening. And a wise person's response to that was, what if this is how it works? When you ask God for peace, He gives you a situation where you have to find peace. I'll say that again. When you ask God for peace, He hears. But He gives you a situation where you have to find peace. Why is that a better way? Well, I'll give you an answer. The wise person says, because if you asked and you just got it, you would not be any better off. We understand and we talk about some scars and vasanas and karma and all of that. If that's just wiped out, which it isn't, of course, we are no better off. And that's why on the path, we have to deal with these things. What we have to do is to clear the slate, to work on those things that are holding us back. The truth is always there. We've said this so many times, don't we? We talk about it. The truth is there, the self is there, Brahman is there, give it whatever name that you want to give it, Shakti is there. So why don't we feel it? Well, it's all of these samskaras and vasanas and karmas that we're dealing with, and really sadhana is about clearing that path. But sometimes we can get a little bit fidgety about that or almost angry. Why can't it just go away? This is a way of looking at it that says, actually you're receiving grace because you're receiving the grace to be able to work with it. And if you get something like the Sandalya Hari, it's saying do these things, but you have to do them and you will get the result. You want peace? Do these things, and you'll have peace. And it is coming. It is a form of anugraha, grace, that's given to you. But it's not like in the world. You go into a store, you want to buy something, and you pay your money, you get it. This is like, okay, do this, and it will change things. So I think the shift that we need inside and in our approach is about how we handle this. So to really experience Shakti, which is the divine feminine, in everything that we do, we need a different approach. Sundar it's all there. And all of those shlokas, that is concretely the different approach. And that's the beauty of Tantra. Yoga and Boga. Enjoyment and truth. But we have to do it. Some version of it. And at this point, you might just think to yourself, what has moved? What has moved? What have you taken through all of this and beautiful sharings that you've received from Gurudev and so on, and the teachers? What do you take away? What do we take away? Because I look up sometimes and I just think, yeah, what am I doing? How is it making a difference? And then you almost like wake up and you go, oh yeah, that's right, mind the gap. Because the difference between when you were doing it and when some things happened that were not so good is when we're not minding the gap. I had a couple of things that I wanted to just, other reminders perhaps. It's really saying, there is no difference. There is no difference inside and outside. There is no difference spiritual and worldly. That is a creation of, if you will, some version of Maya. To say there's the spiritual and there's worldly. Now, in the early stages, you can understand why it's talked about like that. But ultimately, that which helps us in the beginning, we have to let go of. And we have to say, no difference. As long as we hold on to difference, that actually becomes the chain around our neck. And then maybe the question we want to ask is, how can I let that go? And just be who I am, the truth of who I am, here and there. And so then, and I know this is a big thing that Gurudev is often talking about, we don't have this debilitating depression, sadness, all of those things that when we are out there and we're just caught in that, pulls us down. And then we come here and it's like, oh, it's so good. Yeah, but there's really no difference. The difference is in the way we see it. We have a word that in the scientific realm that we use sometimes in other places. You know this word, paradigm? Paradigm? Just basically, it's a frame of mind, it's a structure, it's a way of seeing. And at one point, when I was trying to work out in the world and kind of talk about spiritual things without talking about spiritual things, I had to think of a way to say something about the mind. And I use this paradigm because it comes from the scientific world. Okay, and it's about a frame of reference. And when they use it in science, it's to deal with some issue, like the world is not flat. That's an old paradigm. The world is flat. Okay, and they had to prove that the world was not flat. And that was a revelation, changed everything. And everybody had to actually deal with that. And some people took a long time because they go, the world is flat, because they weren't going out on the water. But the sailors who went out said, "Oh no, you can keep going. It's fine." Slowly, it changes your experience of life. I mean, Dana's laughing, but it's so true, isn't it? You just go, and we have our own versions of that, those things. And our first, maybe spiritual experience is like that. The paradigm gets, and you go, "Oh my God, that's not how I thought it was at all." One of the things he says, and I'm just using it to relate to it, there's a guy by the name of Thomas Kuhn, who back in the 60s wrote a book. He is a scientist, but he noticed something. He noticed in ways scientists are the slowest to change. About their own principles, by the way. And he wrote a book, and it was called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. The structure of, because when they hold on, when they prove something, they're not letting it go. They really, and everything that comes in that's counter, they find a way of working around it. Okay? So this is important, because when the scriptures are talking about these things, and some of the things I've touched on, and what you find in Vedanta and Shaivism, really what's going on is trying to change a paradigm that says, no, life is like this. And then the sages saying, no, life is like this. And at first, no. Okay? But what, and this is where it's relevant to us in an ongoing way. What he was saying, he says, even when people operate more from a scientific perspective, they get a paradigm that they believe in, and they hold on to that. And so the thing that is really the challenge is, how do you then deal with those things that come in and they disturb anomalies? They disturb your understanding because you have an experience, and that experience says, oh, how do I deal with this? I just had an out-of-body experience. The medical community doesn't really, And he says, this is what it's like on the spiritual journey. On the spiritual journey, even if it's just an intention, but certainly if we have experiences, it runs counter to the paradigm that we've been working with all our lives. And as we move along intentionally on the spiritual path, we can potentially keep running into those limiting paradigms, limiting ways of thinking. So it's one of the things I think is behind when Buddha says, you can talk about it all you want, but are you changing? And it's not really a criticism as much as it is, like Einstein is saying, keep moving. Because you get one paradigm, which is an expansion, and then something happens that says, you mean I got to expand even more? And eventually you go, I guess that's what this journey is about. Continually expanding. And each time, it feels like this incredible imposition. I'm leading my life, and now you're going to tell me this? But that's the nature of truth. That's the nature of the divine. And yes, that's what happens. And ultimately, Shankaracharya says, I know I've given you this structure. I know I've said these really powerful things, but I notice that people can get stuck. And then he becomes a poet. And he says things in this space that are beyond just logic, but are so powerful and so real and so much the living version of what the scriptures are saying. It's not necessarily using the word Brahman. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not using that paradigm. It's not going against it. It's not counter to it. But it's so fluid. It's so otherworldly. It's so sweet. It's filled with so much beauty if we can just go with it So Shankaracharya ultimately gives us a way through his divinely inspired poetry to keep moving. But nothing happens unless something changes. Sagunath Maharaj Ki Jai.
महाराज की जय। Gachatvam samvadadvam sambhomanam sijanatam deva bhagamyata purve samjanana upasate samano mantra samiti samani samanam manah sachittamesham samanam mantramabhimantrayeva samane navo avishajuhomi samani vaakuti samanardayani va samanamastuvo manoyatha vasu sahasati hari Jagati jata maya navashadi Stuti japar charachin taravarjita Nakalukha chan kalakalasime Nakalukha chan kalakalasime Nakalukha chan kalakalasime Sadguru Nanak Maharaj ki jai. O Goddess, what piece of literature in this world is not a tribute to you? Indeed, your very being pervades all speech. O Goddess, now in my mind, your presence is perceived in every form that manifests and in every thought that arises. O destroyer of all inauspiciousness, O embodiment of auspiciousness, contemplating thus, effortlessly, not a single moment of my time passes without your praise, chanting, worship, or meditation. In other words, all my worldly activities have been transformed into your worship. So as Larry was speaking about minding the gap, and then referring to Dana last week about faith, and then Nicheshwari about doubt. This path, the Siddha path, gives us all of the opportunities, all of the practices, the teachings, in order that we can move. So we have the choices as to which ones we want to bring forward. So whether we're chanting kirtan, whether we are meditating, whether we are attending a course, whether we are in Gurudev's presence for intensives, whether we are coming for weekly satsang, whatever it is, Navaratras, and the list goes on. But it's so palpable and so full of feeling, bhavana. And this path, I mean, I'm always at a loss for words in many ways because it's so full, so deep, so wide, so high, so expansive. And all we have to do, as Larry was saying, was do the practice, increase the practice, mind the gap, not see the differences between our spiritual life and our worldly life. It's life. There's life. And all of this is incorporated and embraced into it. So as we move forward in the coming weeks, as many of you know, we have a lot to look forward to here. Next weekend, on Friday, August 15th, is the Divi Diksha, the initiation day of initiation of Baba Muktananda, and that's on a Friday. And we'll be celebrating and honoring that occasion here on Friday evening from 5:30 to 6:30 with a global puja by Prabal. So everyone's invited to join us for that, followed by dinner down at the stream. And then on that Sunday, at our Sunday morning satsang, we have Umesh Nagarkate, who's just coming in from India, and he will also be here to speak about Baba's initiation and to give us a little bit more background and history of that for those of us who may not be familiar with that. But it's truly because of Baba's being initiated by Bhagawan Nityananda and receiving that Shaktipat, receiving that initiation, that we're all here, that we're all gathered here, that we're all in satsang, that we're following the path, that we're being instructed how to move forward, how to move in sadhana. And I mean, it's miraculous, and it just gets better and better and fuller and fuller. Then that's on the 17th, so that's next Sunday. And then that upcoming week on the 22nd is Gurudev's arrival, so he'll be putting his feet onto this land, to this ashram on August 22nd. And then August 21st, 24th, then we'll be having his welcome program. And just to remind everybody, that program will be down at Namaste. So we'll continue to gather here for the next week and a half, and then we'll be down at Namaste in the large lobby down there so that we can accommodate and house everyone. And that's his welcome program. And then right behind that, we get into our Labor Day weekend and then the month of September. And as many of you know, I've been sharing it for weeks now, and it's coming out in all of our flyers and all of you by emails. But we have the Shiva Shakti course, which starts on September 12th, arrivals here. And we're pretty full to capacity with all of that. On the 13th, we have the intensive. And then on Sunday, we have our Sunday morning satsang. And then the course continues through from that 15th until the 19th on that Friday. As soon as we get to the 19th, 20th, and 21, we're into the ashram, Shanti Mandir Walden's 25th year anniversary here. And we'll be celebrating that in a very, very glorious way. Everyone is welcoming. Everyone is welcome to come and join us on the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday. There's going to be lots of events. We even have raffles. We have all sorts of fun things that people aren't even going to have any idea of, any clue of. So there's lots of sweet surprises within that, but lots of chanting, lots of honoring the land, honoring Gurudev's presence here, honoring one another's presence, and the satsang that has really, for 25 years, been at it just at this location. So, and I always say when I talk about it that many of us have been on the path for, say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. But it's really a testimony to Baba Muktananda, the Shaktipat that he gave, the tradition that he shared, the lineage that he represents and reflected so beautifully. So for all of us to be able to come together and honor that together, it's going to be a wonderful, memorable occasion, and everyone is welcome to any part of it. On the Friday night, we'll have the Hare Rama, Hare Krishna in the tent for probably a couple hours, and then we'll go down to the stream, and then we'll have dinner prasad down there and a bonfire, and then on Saturday we'll have appreciation events, all for our community, and also all of the satsang, the devotees, and all of the people who have supported this ashram and helped build it and manifest it over the many years. Then on Sunday we'll have our Sant Samagam with all of our swamis and priests and everyone coming in and offering their blessings to the continuation of this. And then on Sunday afternoon, we'll have a land blessing over across the rail trail for the next phase of our phase 2 development. So that's a lot. So that's all there. And then after that, we have Navaratra. Starts the next day on the 22nd. So September 22nd, we go into Navaratra for 9 days. And then directly following that, Gurudev is off to Argentina for 3 weeks, where there's lots of preparations underway to welcome him there. It's been quite a few years since he's been there, so they're eager to have him back. So we'll be having a tour there, and then directly to Mexico for about 10 days as well. And then Gurudev will be back here for the month of November here at the ashram. So all of that being said, everybody is invited to come up for darshan, followed by lunch prasad. We have a group in residence right now, Rahul Fafali, and they're a tabla group that have been here all, since Wednesday. So today we have a lovely bandara down at Namaste. So we have Shahi Paneer, we have Jeera rice, and we have many other beautiful things. So enjoy all of the lunch prasad, and make sure as you leave the temple building, you can, in the shoe room, there's the save the dates. There's the postcard that has all of the dates on it and all of the list of the events to join us for that special and memorable and moving celebration, September 19th, 20th, and 21st. Thank you all. Sadhgurunad Maharaj Ki Jai. Wait, and I have one more thing. I always have one more thing, right? And as I said a few weeks ago, I said, our celebrations have begun, the 25th anniversary celebrations, because we had Madhu Chara, who is one of the pillars of Baba Muktananda's tradition from New Delhi. And she came here physically and sat here in this temple. And when she left, I had no idea because I was driving her to Beacon Station. And when I came back in the evening, Govind came to me and he said, "Oh, Auntie, here's a envelope that was left on the Padukas." And she had written all these blessings for the 25th anniversary. So I said, "The first one is here." And now we have the second one. Arun Gupta, who is here from New Delhi. I knew he was in town with the wedding of Rakesh and Vanita Gupta's daughter. And I was like, oh, I hope we'll get to see him. I hope we'll get to have his darshan. I hope he'll come grace the ashram with his presence. And I had no idea you guys were coming, and I'm really grateful. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for taking the time to come and place your footprints here and give us all your blessings for the upcoming celebration and the many years to come here. And so now I'm done. Sadhgurunath Maharaj Ki